Okay, Ange. The team that I've been dogging all podcast, they finally lost. And I'm not celebrating your Rangers loss, but I think we all knew it was going to happen eventually.
You're celebrating it a bit.
I mean, a little bit, but can you blame me?
No, not really. I mean, I said it time and time again. You never, ever, ever worry until a team loses at home in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And this was a perfect example of that. What did you see from the Tampa Bay Lightning with respect to resilience in this series?
Just the experience came out in full force. I think any other team that goes down 2-0, granted it was on the road, then like you said, until you lose at home, you're not too worried. But I think if this was any other team, as an outsider, as a fan of that team, when you go down 2-0 to a team that thrives on momentum like the Rangers, you'd be thinking, oh boy, like maybe we're in for a bit of a mess here. But that just wasn't the case. The Tampa just decided they're gonna beat Tampa when they got home, and it was curtains after game 3. I feel like once they got that first game, it's like, okay, yeah, I think they're gonna end up doing this.
Yeah, John Cooper said it best. He said it took us a game and a half roughly to get our legs, and he couldn't have said it better. I mean, they looked really flat in game 1 and I think 2 periods of game 2 as well. They got smashed, like 6-2 in game 1, went down 3-1 early in the third period, and then in the third period in game 2, that's when I finally started feeling confident that the real Tampa came to play. They got it to 3-2, ended up losing that game, but like John Cooper said, he kind of gave a little bit of foreshadowing. They looked like going back to Tampa, they were going to wrap this series up in 4 games. And I mean, yeah, never, ever, ever worry until the team loses at home. I kind of want to talk about the line that I think was the best line in this series. I don't know if you agree, the Hagel, Cirelli, Killorn line, which was kind of manufactured once Point got hurt. Did you notice anything special from them?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to ever... On a team like Tampa who was loaded with stars, they're never going to steal the headlines offensively maybe, but they're just solid. And Cirelli's an elite two-way player. I think these past 2 cups, everyone's learned that. It's not a surprise, but he continues to demonstrate that regularly. Killorn he's that guy, every time there's an off-season and everyone's saying Tampa needs to shed salary, it's always Killorn's going to go, but he never goes. And it's because he's just so consistent and good. He scores timely goals, and he's someone that the coach can rely upon, which in a setting like this, Eastern Conference Finals, that's pretty valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were the best line over the latter half of the series, to your point as well. They did not contribute much to scoring. I think Hagel had 1 goal, and that's it. Cirelli and Killorn were held off the score sheet. Maybe Cirelli had 1 assist, but they barely gave up any goals throughout all the series. Yeah. To your point, Cirelli is an elite two-way defender, two-way offensive defender. I mean, got Selke votes this year, plays both sides of the puck really well. And checking, man, out of the 3 lines, they definitely generated the most chances. I think Shesterkin robbed Hagel 2 or 3 times in the series. Cirelli missed an easy 2-on-1. This line could have easily had 4 goals. I think this is a really good lesson for kids watching hockey. Like, there are ample ways, as exemplified by this line, to contribute to a game, and ample ways to earn ice in ways other than scoring both goals and assists.
Yeah,
right?
That's a great point.
They all averaged, roughly 20 minutes? I mean, they were driving play, creating chances, something that was very often under notice that I think led to a few Tampa goals, maybe Stamkos goals specifically, is that they would check really well, get an offensive zone face-off, and then Stamkos would come off that offensive zone face-off and score. I mean, when you have a checking line like that, you wear teams down, and you could tell throughout as the series went on, the Rangers looked worse and worse. They got tired.
Yeah, I think the tiredness is a good point because they went deep in 2 series in a row. They had to fight back from behind in both those series. That definitely weighs on you. And Tampa had that 9 days of rest. That was always going to come through for them. I'm sure they were so happy to get the sweep, not only because it's their rivals, and to sweep a rival is a pretty big statement, but after 2 years of deep playoff runs, to get 9 days of rest in the middle of the playoffs for that team is, I think if they win the cup, we're going to look back on that 9 days of rest and think, yeah, that's maybe what pushed them over the edge, because that's massive for them. Yeah, I think Tampa, to win this series, they did what, and you alluded to it with that forward line. They gave the Rangers 0 space.
Yep.
In each of Game 3 to Game 6, Tampa held the Rangers to less than 2 expected goals per game at 5-on-5. And in Game 6, as we come to expect now, Vasilevsky and the Bulls, it was less than 1 expected goal at 5-on-5. And maybe expected goals is maybe not a lot of context to that stat, but I looked in moneypuck.com, which is actually such a good website. They have a little heat map of scoring chances, and if I went to go look through each of the games, and the Rangers couldn't really generate anything from that home plate area that all the analysts show on TV, just like right in front of the net in the high slot. They had really no chances coming from that. That's exactly what we expect from Tampa. And a big part of that team defense, Vasilevsky, he had a .955 from games 3 to 6. I don't know how you can expect to beat a team that's not only good defensively, but they have one of the best goalies to ever play. When he's putting up those numbers, it's tough. This is not an indictment on the Rangers. This is just Tampa they worked their way into this series and dominated after.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good points here that I want to touch on one by one. First and foremost, the rest aspect, and then we'll move on to the 5-on-5. I thought a lot of things that you said there were very prevalent. First and foremost, I think this bears repeating because there's firsthand evidence now. We've talked about this. The argument against the playoff format is you need to play the best teams anyway, so it doesn't matter. That has no value because we see evidence right now in the Eastern Conference Finals with Tampa Bay having an easy ride in the sense that they had rest. You sacrifice maybe 1.5 to 2 games versus New York having to go through 2 really, really tough 7-game series. It can end up costing you a series, right?
Sure.
So when we look at this now with Tampa Bay, I mean, if Tampa Bay, the Leafs took them to 7, but if Florida took them to 6 or 7 games too, I don't know if Tampa comes back down to nothing.
Very different series.
Right? And the same thing to that point, if New York doesn't go 7 against Boston, 7 against Carolina.
Carolina, yeah.
Sorry, to Pittsburgh and then to Carolina. My apologies. Maybe they have enough gas in the tank. Like as you could see, as the series got closer and closer to the end, New York just had no gas in the tank.
Yeah. And I mean, that's sort of the price to pay when you go down in 2 series in a row. You're going to have to play long series. And New York got themselves out of those holes, and really impressive that they did that. But when it comes to Eastern Conference Finals, you're playing against a team with rest and experience. You almost saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, like we said again, having time off will cost you 1 game, right? Versus playing many more series will cost you a series, and we saw that here.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to talk about, you brought up really well, is that New York, with respect to your heat map argument, is just not good 5-on-5. We saw it in the Pittsburgh series, dominated 5-on-5. They got lucky that they played against a team with no Crosby for a little bit and with a third-string goalie, and then the same thing in the Carolina series. I think those Jay Fresh stats showed that they got absolutely dominated 5-on-5. They just ended up winning because A, their power play was insane, and number 2, Carolina just couldn't score, and we saw it again. And the point I'm trying to make here is that the by far and away the most important metric, I think, in a 7-game series in the Stanley Cup is 5-on-5 play.
For sure.
Right? And when a team can't play 5-on-5, I mean, there's just no way that you beat a high caliber team, especially back-to-back Cup champs.
Yeah, and I mean, you can definitely maybe win a series or 2 like we saw on some opportunistic scoring and a good power play and some running gun hockey. You can, absolutely. But I think they can only take you so far. Like you said, you come up against a team that's done it 2 years in a row, they're going to shut you down, especially 5-on-5. And you mentioned bad 5-on-5 play can't take you very far, but you know who can is Igor. Yeah. Igor, did he cement himself? He's probably going to win the Vezina this year. So will win the Vezina this year. So he's a top goalie this year. But I'm talking about starting fresh next year. Is he cemented himself as a top 2 or 3 goalie in the league?
Oh, cemented top 2 for sure. I think this series showed that Vasilevsky still has the crown. I mean, when push came to shove, Vasilevsky showed up in Game 6. He showed up in Game 5 as well. I mean, to his point, he didn't have legs as well in the first 2 games, and they got destroyed. But for any of these New York Rangers fans, anyone new to the game that thinks Shesterkin is a better player than Andrei Vasilevsky, he's a fantastic player, but going into a Stanley Cup final Game 7, I think 100 coaches out of 100 take Andrei Vasilevsky.
Yeah, I don't think they should think otherwise. He's won 2 in a row. He's a beast. Shesterkin is probably going to get there one, maybe not to that same level, but he's going to see similar success at some point. But yeah, what a playoff performance by this guy. He's going to get paid in a couple of years when his contract is up. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how they can work their way around some of their cap implications that they're going to have. But maybe let's just wrap up this series by just kind of talking about the Rangers. I mean, they overachieved with a young team. I don't think anybody, including myself, expected them to make it even past the first or second round. I think they're going to be a team to watch out for the next couple of years, especially with the Metro. You have aging Caps who are kind of already really done, let's say, and then Pittsburgh, who, even if they keep their core together, they're going to continue to age. Are you expecting some deep playoff runs from the Rangers in the next few years, or do you think this was a fluke?
No, I'm expecting some deep playoff runs if they can start learning to play 5-on-5. I mean, I think part of that immaturity is shown by the fact that you got dominated 5-on-5. New York lives and dies by the sword, and the sword here is the power play. I mean, game 1 and 2, I think they scored a total of 9 goals. 8 of them were even strength, which was great, which is why they won those first 2 games. But when you look at game 3 and on, they only scored 5 goals, and 4 of them were on the power play, right? And to that point, when you can't play 5-on-5, I think with maturity comes better 5-on-5 checking and better 5-on-5 domination. So I think if New York starts to play better and starts to mature a little bit, I do expect to see some cup runs going on here. They are deep offensively.
Yeah, they're sneaky deep, and their young players are only going to get better. Right, Lafreniere talked about in the end of season press conference that he expects himself to be in the top 6 next year. I mean, Kapokak was an RFA, so we'll see how that plays out if he stays or goes. But they're only going to get better because their best players are under 30 or so. So yeah, they're going to be good for a few more years for sure.
Yeah, I think New York is in a good spot. Quite simply because they have the most important position locked up when making deep cup runs. I mean, when you have a goalie that is that good, he can single-handedly win you series. And to Tampa's credit, they were the only team that figured out Igor Shesterkin. And I think a big reason why they did that was the adjustments that they made. We saw in game 1 and 2, they just couldn't score. And then I don't know if it was game 4 or game 5 that Sergachev scored those 2 goals. They ended up winning 2-1 or 3-2. And it just seems so clear that John Cooper's message in the dressing room was, if Igor can see it, Igor will stop it. So put 7-8 bodies in front of him. And those 2 Sergachev shots that went in, there were not only 3 guys that were providing a screen. It was like multiple vertical layers of screening. When Igor could not see the puck, that was the only way they were going to score on him, and they did it.
Yeah, I mean, shots from the point are valuable if the goalie can't see it. If they're tippable, you're going to score a bunch of goals that way. So, I mean, that's another testament to the way Tampa can sort of find different ways to beat you. They're going to find ways to score even when your goalie seems like he's a god.